Power Automate, creating an approval flow including links to uploaded files that updates a SharePoint and sends an email. This video shows you how to create a Power Automate flow that takes information when a form is submitted, puts that information into a SharePoint list, sends an approval request with links to uploaded documents, updates the SharePoint list when the approval has been actioned, and sends an email to the person who submitted the form notifying them of the outcome. Before creating the flow, there are two artifacts which need to be created, the form and the SharePoint list. This example is for a staff member to submit 2 documents and agree to a work from home policy. The form contains several different question types, including free text, multiple choice, and 2 file uploads. It's important to note this question here asks the staff member to select their line manager. In this example, the email address of the line manager has been included, but you could get the staff member to type in this information or use a lookup in another list. This is an important field to have, as it will be used to send the approval to the correct person. The form should also be moved to a Microsoft team where the approvers are members so that all file uploads can be accessed for them to approve. Once the form has been created, the SharePoint list should also be created in the same team. There are a few things to note. This first column has been renamed from title to first name. This is a default column which is always created when you create a list. The employee ID, although a number, is treated as text. The 2 columns which contain links to the uploaded files are also text columns, as the Power Automate passes this information into the SharePoint as something called a string. To turn this string into a clickable URL, the columns have been formatted using JSON. You can copy the code from the comments section. The last wording in blue after txtContent can be changed to reflect a suitable name to appear. To change the JSON formatting, you'll need to select the column, select Format this column, and then select Advanced Mode. Where there is a multiple choice in the form, if you copy the responses exactly as they appear in the form, you can then change the formatting in the list of how they're displayed. You can see that this list also contains a column with the email address of the person submitting the form. This is in case the information is needed in the future, for example to send them an email based on the date in the review column. This column here in the form is a multiple choice with multiple selections. It is passed through from Power Automate as an array. We can again use JSON to format this to look like a list. You can copy this from the comments section. Here you can see the JSON is replacing the formatting which would normally appear when an array is added to a single column. Our 2 date columns are formatted as dates. If yours shows the month, day and year instead of day, month and year, check that your team has the correct locale settings. We again have a multiple choice column with our SharePoint choices replicating exactly what the form response says. In our status field, we can use language which makes sense to us. Here I've chosen not approved for when the approval is rejected, and approved for when an approval is approved. Okay, now your form and SharePoint list are created, you can get started on building your flow. Sometimes you might want to start your flow with a template. However, for this flow, because we know exactly what actions you need, select Create a Flow from Scratch. For the trigger, select Automated Cloud Flow. Select when a new response is submitted and give your flow a name. Then select Create. For the first action, the trigger, we need to tell Power Automate which form we want the flow to run off. If the form belongs to you, you might find it in the drop-down options. You can see here the form we want is saved in a team called Form Examples, rather than my account, Edit Learn. Select the ID from the URL. You need to copy everything to the right of ID equals. Back in your flow, select Enter Custom Value and paste in your form ID. The next action you need to add is Get Form Responses, so that you can use these to populate the SharePoint and the approval. Select the plus symbol under the first action, type in Get Response Details, and select this action under Microsoft Forms. If you're building lots of flows with forms, you might want to favourite this by selecting the star. In the Form ID, you again need to select Enter Custom Value and paste in the Form ID. From Response ID, you're going to use Dynamic Content. This is data from a previous action in the flow. To select Dynamic Content, select the lightning icon, then select Response ID. Now, because we want to send an email to the person who submitted the form with the outcome, the next action you're going to add is one that gets the user information. Select the plus symbol again, type Get User Profile V2 in the search, and select this action under Office 365 users. To get this information, in User UPN, you're going to use Dynamic Content and select Responder's email from the Get Response Details action. Now we can access all the information in the form and also the details of the person submitting the form. However, because the form has 2 upload questions, we need to add 2 additional actions so that we can access this information and get the link to the files. Forms sends this information through as a JSON, and to use the different components of the JSON, we need to add a Parse JSON action for each file upload question. Select the plus symbol and type in Parse JSON. Select this action under Data Operations. Now, because we've got multiple files using this same operation, I'm going to select the action name and edit it. This way I know which dynamic content to use later in my flow. In the content box, you need to use dynamic content to select the question with the file upload. Here I'm just putting the start of the question in the search. For the schema, you can again copy and paste the text from the comments. This breaks each bit of information created for the link into a separate piece of data that we can access later. Because my flow has 2 upload questions, I'll repeat this for the second upload question. Add the Parse JSON action. Add the question in the content using dynamic content. Paste in the JSON schema. And rename the action with the file upload content. The next step we want to do is to add all the data from our form into our SharePoint list. To do this, select the plus symbol and type in SharePoint. Select the action Create Item. Select your Microsoft team from the drop-down. If you don't see the team here, you can get the site address from the first part of the URL of your SharePoint list. Everything prior to the / and lists. Once you have selected the site address, you'll be able to select the correct SharePoint from the list name drop-down. Select Show All and see all your columns. You'll find there are more than the ones you have created, as hidden and system columns will also be visible. Note here the first column is called Title, even though we renamed it. In here, select Dynamic Content and then select Given Name, type space, and select Surname from the Get User Profile action. Employee ID we can get straight from the form response details. Under Line Manager, however, we only want the name of the person to appear. In our form, you can see we had the name and the email address in the choice selection. To get just the name to appear, we can use an expression. Select Insert Expression. If you know what you want, you can select the expression. However, we're going to select the dynamic content we want to alter and then use Create an Expression with Copilot to help us. In this case, I want to split the name from the email, so I type in a prompt, give an example of the data appearing, and then what I want the data to look like after. Select Create Expression. Check the expression to make sure it makes sense. It is only going to use the text in position 0 before the dash. Select OK and then select Add. We're going to leave our two upload files blank until the files have been inspected and approved or rejected. But we can put in the other details using the dynamic content. If the column is choice, you can use the custom value option to select the dynamic content. Select Save to save your flow. If there are errors, it won't let you save. Now we have our data added, we're going to start the approval. Select the plus symbol and type in Approval. Then select Start and wait for an approval. Under Approval Type, select Approve, Reject, First to Respond. Give the approval a title. You can also use dynamic content here. We're using the given name and surname of the person submitting the form. Under Assigned To, we also want to use dynamic content. Here select the Settings cog, select Use Dynamic Content and then select the lightning icon or insert an expression. We're going to insert an expression as we want the line manager's email address. We select our dynamic content, line manager, and then type in the prompt to use Copilot to write our expression. You can see it is almost the same as the expression we used for the SharePoint column, but we are getting the text after the dash, not before it, so there's no 0. Select OK and select Add. In Details, you can add what you want the approvers to see. You can use limited formatting with code called Markdown. Here the approval is shown in a table with the attached files as hyperlinks, so that the approver can check these documents before making their decision. To find out more about Markdown, visit the link in the comments section. Here is my Markdown. You can see I've included dynamic content from the form response details and the user profile. I now want to add in the links to the two files, which are put in these brackets so that the text in the square brackets is displayed, not the long URL. I'll get the links using dynamic content, but as I add each link, another action will be added to the flow, the For Each action, and these will be nested. Now, we have the flow which puts in the data in the SharePoint and sends an approval request. We now want to update the status and add the link to the files once the approval step has been completed. To do this, we're going to add an action still within the nested for each controls. And this time we want to add a condition, as our data and email will change depending on the outcome of the approval. In the Choose a Value, select Outcome from the dynamic content. In the Choose a Value, we're going to type in Approve. This is case sensitive, so you want to make sure you type it correctly. If it's true, we're going to update our SharePoint list first with the choice from our status column and also the link to our 2 uploaded files. We only need to add content in the columns which we're changing, the rest can remain blank. Do the same for the false outcome. The last part of our flow is to send an email. For that, you can add the Send an Email v2 action. In the To field, use the dynamic content to add the responder's email. Type in a subject and use dynamic content in the body of the email to allow the email to be addressed to the person, and include other information from the form, such as the review date. Add the Send an Email v2 action to your false outcome branch. Once you finish, select Save. You can now test your flow. The first time you test your flow, you'll need to select Manual. After, you can use it automatically with a previous trigger. Fill in your form to trigger the flow. Back in Power Automate, you can see the first actions have been successfully completed. In my SharePoint list, I have a new entry with the status blank. My line manager will have received an approval request in Teams. Check what this looks like and that the links work. Approve the request and check the email. Here you can see that I didn't select Add for the date expression after I created it. If you need to, go back and edit your flow and then test it again. It's a good idea to test the approval and rejected approval so that you can check the email and status fields for both. And there you have it. You've created an approval flow with a SharePoint list and a mouse.